Hey everybody. Chapter 2, Section 2, title is Solving Two-Step Equations, begins on page 88. In Section 1, we solved one-step equations. Each problem had one operation in it. It might have been addition or subtraction, multiplication or division, but there was only one. In this section, they're going to add a second operation. Solving an equation that has two operations in it uses the same steps as solving a one-step equation. You just have to repeat the steps a second time. So you do the steps a total of twice. The key to the entire problem, if you have two operations, you have to figure out which one to deal with first. And there's a simple way to remember that. To decide which part of the problem to do first, find the number that's farthest away from the variable on the same side of the equal sign, and that's the one that you have to try to get rid of first. So you're looking for the one that's farthest away from the variable. For example, in example 1, what is the solution of 5x plus 12 equals negative 13? First of all, same questions. What's my variable? That's going to be x. What's being done to it? Well, this is a two-step problem, so x is being multiplied by 5 and added by 12. Okay? Which one of those, I'll show the rest of the questions here, which one of those do I deal with first? Remember, I want the one that's farthest away from my variable. The 5 is right next to it. The 12 is farther away, so I'm going to deal with the adding 12 first. Step 4, what is the inverse of that? The inverse of adding 12 is subtracting 12. Step 5, do the inverse to both sides. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 12. I put a minus 12 on both sides. Now I simplify. Adding 12 and subtracting 12 are inverses, so they cancel. On the left-hand side, I have 5x. On the right-hand side, I have negative 13 minus 12, which gives me negative 25. Now, in one-step problem, I'd be done there. But look, is my variable by itself? Remember, we're trying to isolate the variable, get it completely by itself. That x is not by itself. So, step 7, what is being done to the variable? It's being multiplied by 5. Step 8, what is the inverse of that? The inverse of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. Step 9, do the inverse to both sides. So I'm going to divide both sides of the problem by 5. And then I'm going to simplify. Multiplying by 5 and dividing by 5 are inverses, so they cancel. All I have on the left is an x. On the right-hand side, negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5. And again, with these problems, just like section 1, you can take the answer that you got, plug it back into the problem that you started with, and if you end up with something that's true, then you know you have the correct answer. So you can always check your answer to make sure it's the right one. Example 2 is a word problem. The junior class is selling granola bars to raise money. They purchased 1,250 granola bars and paid a delivery fee of $25. The total cost, including the fee, was $800. What is the cost of each granola bar? Now, whenever you're doing a word problem, there's always a set of steps you want to do. First of all, what is it that we're trying to find? Look at the actual question part here. The question says, what was the cost of each granola bar? So we're trying to find the cost of a granola bar. Next, what do we know in this problem? What did they tell us? Well, we know that they bought 1,250 granola bars. We know they paid a delivery fee of $25. And we know that the total cost was $800. And those are the things that it tells us. Pretty much everything else in this problem we don't need, just the stuff that was circled. Next, the directions say define a variable. Define a variable means pick a letter and tell me what it stands for. Well, in this problem, we're trying to find cost. Well, cost starts with C, so we might as well say C equals cost. Okay? That just lets everybody know why we picked the letter C, because it stands for cost. Next, we need to write an equation. Okay, let's think about this for a second. They bought 1,250 granola bars. Do we know the cost of those granola bars? No, we don't. That's what we're trying to find, the cost of each granola bar. If we don't know it, what can we put? Right, we put a variable there. So 1,250 4 bars, and each one was a certain amount, so that's multiply. If they were $1, that would be $1,250. If they were 50 cents, they'd be $625. Okay, so that's multiply. They also paid a delivery fee of $25. Do they have to pay $25 for every bar, or do they just have to pay it once? They only have to pay it once because it's for the total thing. So plus 25. There's no C on that because they don't need to do it for each one of those bars. It says the total, including the delivery fee, was $800. Total should make you think answer. So that's why we get equals 800. Okay. Hopefully you've seen where each part of that problem comes from. Now it's a two-step equation, so we solve our problem. Subtract 25 from both sides. Sorry, C is my variable. It's being multiplied by 1250. It's being added by 25. I want to get rid of the add 25 first because it's farther away from C. So I do the inverse, which is subtract 25, and I do that to both sides. Then I simplify. Add 25 and subtract 25 are inverses, so they cancel. 1,250C equals 775. Now, think about this for a second. We're trying to find cost, right? So what type of answer should we expect to find? Well, when we're talking about money, there's probably going to be two numbers after the decimal point. We'll see if that's what we end up with. C is not by itself. There's a 1250 next to it. The opposite of, or the inverse of multiplying by 1250 is dividing by 1250. Do the same thing to both sides. Multiplying by 1250 and dividing by 1250 are inverses, so they cancel. We have C on the left side. Grab my calculator, 775 divided by 1250 gives us 0.62. Now, when you do a word problem, you have to make sure that you understand what your answer means. C, which stood for cost, is 0.62. Well, if we're talking about money, that means 62 cents. So each bar cost 62 cents. Example 3, still a multi-step problem. Fix that 4 here real quick. There we go. What is the solution of 6 equals x minus 2 divided by 4? Steps are the same. What's the variable? Variable is x. Step 2, what's being done to it? It's being subtracted by 2 and divided by 4. Which one do I deal with first? Well, the 2 is up on the same line as the x. The 4 is way on the bottom. So we say that the 4 is farther away. So we have to deal with dividing by 4 first. The inverse of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. And again, we have to do it to both sides. Do the inverse to both sides. And now we simplify. Multiplying by 4 and dividing by 4 are inverses, so they cancel. So on the right side, I have x minus 2. On the left side, 4 times 6 gives me 24. My variable is not by itself yet, so I have to keep going. What is being done to my variable? It's being subtracted by 2. What's the inverse of subtracting by 2? Adding 2. Do it to both sides. Simplify. Subtracting 2 and adding 2 are inverses, so they cancel. All I have on the right side is an x. 24 plus 2 is 26. And then it says I can check my answer. Now, on this problem, we've got the x on the right-hand side. If x and 26 are the same thing, that's what equals means, I can just flip them around and do x equals 26. Those two things mean the same thing. So that would be my answer. If I wanted to, I could take 26, plug it back into the original problem to make sure that I have the correct answer. One more example here. What is the solution of x divided by 3 minus 5 equals 4? Okay, same steps. What is my variable? My variable is x. What's being done to it? It's being divided by 3 and subtracted by 5. Which one do I deal with first? Well, the x and the 3 are in the same term in this problem. They go together. The minus 5 is off by itself. So in this problem, I'm going to deal with the minus 5 first because it's farther away from the x. So the inverse of subtracting 5 is adding 5. Do it to both sides and simplify. Subtracting 5 and adding 5 are inverses, so they cancel. On the left, I have x divided by 3. On the right, I have 4 plus 5, which is 9. My variable is not by itself yet, so I continue. What's being done to it? It's being divided by 3. The inverse of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. Did it to both sides, and now I simplify. Multiplying by 3 and dividing by 3 are inverses, so they cancel. On the left side, I have x. On the right side, 9 times 3 equals 27. My variable is by itself. That's my answer. Again, I can put it back in the original problem to check my answer and make sure that it is correct. Practice problem section 2, page 91, numbers 11 to 37 odd.